Now we will talk about these sections in details. Since the detailed content of the import section will depend on the needs of each developer and is quite trivial, we will start with the layout section directly. So, the layout of a Dash app is essentially written with Dash HTML components and Dash core components. A Dash HTML component can be, for example, a HTML div or a HTML headline. As for Dash core components, they can be a graph, a drop-down, an input field, and so on. Next, we will take a look at how you can write the layout of your Dash app. First of all, you have to declare the app layout by writing app.layout and store the div that will contain the elements of your page in it. So basically, you specify that this div actually wraps up your whole page. Then, you need the code lines pointed by the arrow on this page to be able to run your app and see what you've done. If you remember the previous slides, you will notice that the content of these code lines pointed by the arrow represent the fourth section of the Dash app. So, we will not need to discuss about it later. Once these things are written, we can now focus on the components. Let's start with the Dash HTML components. So, Dash has for every HTML tag an equivalent component. In this example, you can see the Dash equivalent component of a HTML headline which displays the text Hello Dash. One important thing to know about Dash HTML component is that each of them has a children property, which by convention is always the first attribute when it's not specified. This means when you create your HTML component, you can specify the value of its children property. Otherwise, Dash will assume that it is the first value you define in your component. The children property can be a string, a number, another component, or a list of components. Aside this property, each component has other properties. You can attribute different values to customize your app as you wish. Now, let us see a way to build a div that contains the headline Hello World using a Dash HTML component. So, you declare the div, and inside it, you can optionally declare the property class name, which helps you customize your app. Here, we assign the value container to it, as to say that our div is a container. Then you declare its children property, and you assign a value to it, which in our case is a headline with the text "Hello World." Finally, like in this example, you can also add the style property, like in HTML, to configure the aesthetic of your component. Remember, this is one of different ways to do this. Here, we have left the entire code of an app that render the text "Hello World" and write the expected output. And you can see here we didn't use neither the attribute class name nor the property style. Now that we've learned a bit about the HTML components, we will turn to the second type of component that helps us build the layout of our Dash app, the Dash core component. They are generated with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS through a React.js library. And like we said earlier, they allow us to build components like dropdowns, graphs, and so on. This is, for example, how you can proceed if you wish to add a bar chart in your app. You will need to create the Dash core component BCC graph. So you declare it like on the code, then define its attributes. Your graph must have an unique ID and the data to visualize, which is stored in the attribute figure. Figure contains also the further characteristic of the graph, like the type, in this case bar, since we wish to have a bar chart, the name of the data, the color of the bars, and so on. You can also specify the title of the graph using the attribute layout. In this further example, we add a bar chart to the layout already containing the headline, and left you have the output. Since one of the goals of Dash is to enable the creation of complex components with less code and without switching contexts or languages, it offers the possibility to create complex, reusable components. To do so, you just have to define the name of the reusable component, and when needed, the parameters it needs, add a return statement, and finally the value of it. Then you can use it so often you need in your layout with different parameters or not, without having to write the same code over and over again. For example, instead of adding a bar chart like we did in previously, you can create a reusable graph like in this code, and you will not have to write it again when you want to add another bar chart. You will have the same output with the difference that now you will be able to use it more times.